26 feet underground, 8 tons of reinforced concrete overhead, no internet connection, no physical link to the outside world inside the Natanz fuel enrichment plant. Rows of centrifuges spin at 1,200 times per second, separating uranium atoms by weight, the essential step toward building either a power plant or a nuclear weapon. Engineers here believed they were untouchable. The facility had been specifically designed to resist every known intelligence method. No CIA agent could get inside. No satellite could see through the concrete. No signal could reach in or out. The control panel showed everything operating normally. They were wrong, and they had been wrong for over a year. Weapon was already inside, invisible, patient, and waiting for the right moment. The most dangerous thing in the building wasn't the uranium. It was 600 kilobytes of code in June 2010. Two cybersecurity researchers named Sergei Ulasin and Oleg Kupriv were working remotely for a small firm in Minsk, Belarus. Their client, an Iranian company, was having problems. Computers kept crashing, rebooting, behaving in ways no one could explain. Ulasin and Kupriv dug into the code. What they found stopped them cold. This wasn't malware. Not in any sense they recognized. What they were looking at was something that had never existed before, a computer worm of extraordinary complexity, built not to steal information or display a message, but to physically destroy industrial machinery. While convincing every monitoring system that everything was fine, it was using not one, but 4 previously unknown software vulnerabilities, what security researchers call zero-day exploits. Finding 1 0-day is rare. 2 is exceptional. 4 means you're not dealing with criminals or hackers. You're dealing with a government. A very well-funded one. The worm was 600 kilobytes, gigantic for malicious code. The notorious Conficker worm, which infected 6 million computers worldwide, was 35 kilobytes. Whatever this thing was doing, it required an enormous amount of code. To do it, it had already spread to over 100,000 computers across more than 100 countries, but mostly, overwhelmingly, it had spread to Iran. Someone was looking for something specific, and they had found it. The researchers named it from 2 strings buried in the code, Stuxnet. By 2006, the United States had a problem with no clean solution. Iran's uranium enrichment program at Natanz was advancing. The facility was deep underground, hardened against conventional bombs. A military strike would be devastating and would likely trigger a regional war. Economic sanctions were slow. Negotiations were failing. President George W. Bush was briefed on a third option: the CIA, working with Israeli military intelligence, specifically Unit 8200. Israel's equivalent of the NSA had been developing something unprecedented, a digital weapon capable of physically destroying centrifuges while the operators watched normal readings on their screens. Project was called Operation Olympic. They built a full-scale replica of the Natanz facility in the forests of Tennessee to understand exactly how the centrifuge systems worked and exactly how to break them without triggering any alarms. But there was a fundamental problem they couldn't solve from Tennessee. The weapon needed to get inside, and Natanz was air-gapped, physically disconnected from every external network. No email, no internet, no wireless signal. The only way to get code inside was to physically carry it through the gates. His name was Eric van Sabin, was a Dutch engineer living in Dubai, working for a transportation company. He was also an asset for the Dutch intelligence service, the AIVD, and in late 2008, he was given what intelligence officers call a final assignment. Van Sabin was to enter Natanz under the cover of installing water pumps. Inside a piece of equipment, exactly which piece has never been fully confirmed, was a USB drive. On that drive was Stuxnet. He got in. He did the job. He came back out 2 weeks after the Stuxnet attack activated. Eric van Sabin died in a single-vehicle motorcycle accident in Dubai. He was 36 years old. There was no official acknowledgement, no ceremony, no public record of what he had carried inside those walls. He remains, to this day, one of the most consequential intelligence assets in the history of the invisible war against Iran's nuclear program, and almost no one knows his name. Once inside the Natanz systems, Stuxnet did something elegant and deeply cruel. It watched. For months, the worm recorded the normal operating patterns of the facility, learning every routine, every reading, every expected number. It built a perfect model of how Natanz was supposed to look when everything was working correctly. Then, when it was ready, it began its attack in 2 stages simultaneously. Stage 1, send fake data to the control room. Every monitor, every panel, every readout in the operator station began showing recorded normal data, the readings from all those months of observation. From the Iranian engineer's perspective, nothing had changed. Systems nominal. Centrifuges operating normally. Stage 2, destroy the centrifuges in total. Stuxnet is believed to have disabled or destroyed approximately 1,000 centrifuges at Natanz, roughly 10% of the total operational capacity. The Institute for Science and International Security estimated at the time that the uranium enrichment program had been set back by at least 1 to 2 years, and the Iranian government had no idea why. Scientists were running diagnostics. Engineers were reviewing procedures. Senior officials were holding emergency meetings trying to understand why their world-class, Soviet-designed centrifuges were failing at catastrophic rates. While showing perfect readings on every instrument, some Iranian scientists resigned under the pressure. One senior official at the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, believed to have presided over Natanz during the worst of the failures, stepped down under unexplained circumstances. The CIA watched from satellite data as centrifuge after centrifuge was removed. Stuxnet was never supposed to leave Natanz. The weapon was designed with a specific target profile. It would only activate on systems running Siemens Step 7 software connected to specific centrifuge configurations. On any other system, it would simply replicate and wait, theoretically harmless, but invisible. The problem was a bug in the code somewhere in Natanz. An engineer brought a work laptop to the facility. When that laptop later connected to an external network, when it left the air-gapped environment, Stuxnet was on it. And instead of recognizing the change in environment, the worm treated the external internet like another network to spread through within weeks. Stuxnet had propagated to over 100,000 computers across more than 100 countries: Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Malaysia, the United States itself. The weapon that had operated in perfect secrecy for over a year was now global news. It was Yeltsin and Kapriv in Belarus who found it first. When they published their findings in July 2010, cybersecurity researchers worldwide began tearing the code apart. What they eventually assembled over months of work revealed the full scope of what had been deployed: the scale, the sophistication, the 4 0 days, the Siemens Step 7 targeting, the industrial sabotage logic. There was only one conclusion available. A nation-state had built the most sophisticated cyberweapon ever seen, and it had been running undetected inside one of the most sensitive nuclear facilities on Earth to this day. Neither the United States nor Israel has officially admitted responsibility, but a U.S. general leaked the details to the New York Times, and a sitting president, Barack Obama, did not deny the program when asked directly. Operation Olympic Games was over. Its existence was public. Its effects permanent. Stuxnet was not the end of the campaign. It was the beginning of one in 2021. Another suspected cyber attack struck Natanz, this time knocking out power to centrifuge holes. Israeli intelligence was widely credited. Iran's program was disrupted briefly, again in the years that followed. A shadow war continued in parallel. Iranian nuclear scientists were assassinated. A Mossad raid stole 1.5 tons of classified nuclear archive files from a Tehran warehouse in 2018. Explosions hit Iranian non-nuclear facilities under circumstances never officially explained, and then, on June 12, 2025, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israeli warplanes had struck Natanz directly, not with code, with bombs the same facility that Stuxnet had silently infiltrated 16 years earlier was now physically destroyed from the air. The United States joined the strikes on June 21st to 22nd, 2025, hitting Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan in a coordinated campaign aimed at, in the words of the U.S. administration, destroying or severely degrading Iran's nuclear program. A ceasefire was announced on June 23rd. It held briefly on March 1st, 2026. A new joint U.S.-Israeli military campaign began, striking nuclear fuel cycle sites again. Iran, meanwhile, has been rebuilding. Satellite imagery shows construction resuming at bombed sites. A new underground enrichment facility was declared to the IAEA in June 2025. Tehran has hardened surviving facilities with concrete sarcophagi to protect against future strikes. War that Stuxnet started invisibly in 2009 has never ended. It evolved from code to assassinations to bombs, and as of today, it is still ongoing. Stuxnet was not a solution. It was a choice to fight a war without declaring one, to buy time without paying the cost of direct confrontation. And every tool used since then, from cyber attacks to commando raids to airstrikes, is a continuation of that same logic. Before Stuxnet, the accepted wisdom was that code could steal information, disrupt networks, or embarrass governments. It could not destroy physical machinery. It could not blow up centrifuges. Stuxnet proved otherwise. And that proof cannot be taken back. The weapon demonstrated that a sufficiently sophisticated digital attack could cause physical destruction, real, measurable, industrial-scale damage, without a single soldier crossing a border or a single missile leaving a launcher. It also demonstrated something darker. Once a weapon like this exists, it becomes available. Stuxnet's code has been publicly analyzed, dissected, and documented for 15 years. The techniques it pioneered, the zero-day chaining, the cicada targeting, the fake sensor data, are now part of the standard playbook for state-level cyber operations worldwide. The United States and Israel built a weapon to contain one country's nuclear ambitions. In doing so, they also wrote a manual that every nation with the technical capacity to read it has since studied. Russia, China, North Korea, Iran itself. The genie does not go back in the bottle, but what America demonstrated, and what Stuxnet remains proof of, is that the United States has the capacity, the ingenuity, and the willingness to fight wars on terms no adversary was prepared for, to build a replica of an enemy facility in a Tennessee forest, to recruit a Dutch engineer in Dubai, to write 4 zero-day exploits and deploy them simultaneously inside the most hardened nuclear facility in the world, and to do it without firing a shot, without a declaration, without most of the world knowing it had happened at all. That is the American advantage that Stuxnet represents, not just the weapon, but the capability behind it. Eric Van Sabin carried that weapon into Natanz. He never came back from it, and the program he helped launch is still reshaping the Middle East today. The invisible war didn't end. It just changed form. Stuxnet proved that the most dangerous weapon isn't always the one you can see. Subscribe if you want more of the operations that shaped the modern world, the ones that happened in the dark, before anyone knew a war had even started. Like this video if Stuxnet's story deserves to be told in full. See you in the next classified file.